What happens when a man becomes the very monster he's been hiding from? In a mansion consumed by its own dark secrets, one butler's twisted fate leads him into the shadows of his own soul. Prepare for a chilling tale of betrayal, horror, and an unholy transformation. Can Archibald escape the grip of the house, or has he already become a part of it? Stay tuned. This story will leave you questioning what lurks behind every door. The grand estate was quiet. Too quiet for a house that once echoed with laughter and clinking glass. Archibald Hall stood at the center of the drawing room. The velvet curtains were half drawn. Late afternoon light cast long, sharp shadows on the floor. He wore his butler's uniform with pride. Polished shoes, white gloves, a tie knotted with precision. But beneath the charm and posture, something simmered. A silence buzzed behind his ears. The kind that crawled over the skin. The kind that warned of something wrong. The air smelled of lavender polish and old secrets. The fireplace was cold, unlit, yet sweat beaded at his temple. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Slow, measured. He turned his head but saw no one. A clock ticked. The sound, once dull, now thundered in his skull. Each tick a countdown. Each second heavier than the last. Then, a faint creak. From the cellar door. Archibald's jaw tightened. He had locked that door. He was certain of it. He moved toward it, step by step. The floor groaned beneath his weight. The handle was cold. Too cold for a warm spring afternoon. He pressed his ear against the wood. Nothing. And then, a whisper. Low. Hoarse. Breathing his name. He opened the door. Darkness greeted him. Not the ordinary kind. This darkness felt alive. Thick. Heavy. It clung to his skin. He descended the steps. One by one. The wooden boards moaned in protest. The scent of mold grew stronger. It mixed with something else. Iron. Rot. At the bottom, his hand reached for the pull cord. The bulb flickered once. Then again. Then lit. And there she was. Lady Margaret. Still in her evening gown. Eyes wide. Mouth open in a frozen scream. Seated upright in an old wingback chair. Arms bound. Skin pale as chalk. Her teacup rested beside her. Still half full. Archibald's breath caught in his throat. He had buried her. Weeks ago. And yet, here she was. Looking right at him. Her lips moved. No sound came out. But he knew what she said. I remember. A shiver sliced down his spine. He stumbled back, knocking over a tin tray. The clang echoed like a gunshot. He ran up the steps. The light behind him sputtered, then went out. The drawing room was no longer empty. A figure stood by the window, cloaked in shadow. The scent of lavender now turned acrid, like burnt sugar and blood. His hands shook. The gloves felt tighter now, smothering. The figure stepped forward, and Archibald saw his own face. Older, colder, eyes like ice. You forgot, the figure said. But I never do. Archibald's knees buckled. His heart pounded against his ribs. The ticking clock had stopped. Silence returned. But it was different now. Heavy. Watching. The room pulsed with stillness, like it held its breath. Archibald crawled backward across the polished floor. His breath rasped in his throat. The other him did not move. Just stood, unblinking, smiling. That smile was not his. It was wider, hungrier. Behind him, the cellar door slammed shut. A gust of air swept through the room, carrying whispers. Names. So many names. Lady Margaret. Donald. The porter. The boy. Each one chanted like a curse. Each one a scar in his memory. The lights above flickered. The chandelier swayed. Its crystals trembled like nervous teeth. He tried to stand. His legs betrayed him, like they knew what was coming. The other Archibald stepped closer. His shoes made no sound, like he walked through water, or through dreams. You were the uniform, the voice said. But you were never meant to serve. The walls began to weep. Not with water, but with something darker. It dripped down the wallpaper. streaks of red and brown, old and fresh all at once. Archibald clutched the edge of a velvet armchair. His fingers left streaks on the fabric. He was bleeding, but could not find the wound. He looked up. The other Archibald was gone. Now, the mirror above the fireplace showed two reflections. One of him, one not. The second figure moved when he did not. Its eyes glowed faintly, mouth open in a silent scream. Archibald turned away. He could not bear it, but the voices would not stop. They swirled in his ears. Low. Insistent. You remember now, they hissed. You cannot pretend anymore. He staggered to the hallway. The floor beneath his feet felt soft, like flesh, pulsing. He reached for the front door, but the handle melted in his hand, slick and warm like a tongue. He reeled back. The house groaned. It knew. It had always known. Portraits along the hallway stared down at him. Eyes no longer painted. They blinked, followed him, judged him. Then, a single sound. The bell. The silver dinner bell on the butler's tray. It rang once. Clear. Sharp. Final. And he knew. Dinner was served. The bell's chime echoed through the house. It vibrated through the floorboards, through his bones, through the very air he breathed. Archibald turned slowly, drawn by the sound, by duty, by dread. The dining room doors stood open, though he could not remember opening them. Candles flickered along the table. Each flame twisted unnaturally, like they danced to a silent song. Silverware gleamed, perfectly arranged. Polished plates, crystal goblets filled with something dark. He stepped forward. His shoes left wet prints on the floor. He did not look down. He could not. At the head of the table sat a figure, motionless, wrapped in silk and shadow. Lady Margaret again, or something wearing her face. Next to her sat Donald, head tilted, neck bruised and bent. Then the boy, his eyes wide, glass-like, unblinking. The rest of the chairs filled slowly. One by one, figures formed out of mist and memory. All of them guests, all of them victims. Each turned toward him, smiling with broken lips. Lips that whispered through death. Sit, Archibald, they said. This is your table now. He backed away. His knees hit the corner of the table. A knife fell. It clattered to the floor. The sound rang like a scream. Blood began to pour from the chandelier, dripping into the soup bowls, into the wine glasses, onto the lace tablecloth. He looked down at his hands. The white gloves had turned red, soaked through, sticking to his skin. The house groaned again. The walls cracked. The ceiling trembled. The chair at the end of the table scraped backward. Empty. Waiting. He was not asked again. He was expected. With shaking limbs, Archibald moved forward, drawn by something deeper than fear, a sense of finality. He sat. The room fell silent, utterly still. Then forks lifted, knives sliced, mouths chewed. But nothing was served, nothing visible, only the sound of eating, ripping, swallowing, gnashing. And Archibald, he began to feel full, stomach tightening, heavier with every breath. He looked down. His plate was no longer empty. On it lay a face, his own, smiling back. The room erupted in laughter. High, twisted, endless. The laughter echoed off the walls, deep and guttural, as if the house itself was mocking him. Archibald's vision blurred. His breath became shallow. He could taste iron in the back of his throat. The face on his plate stared up at him. The eyes, they moved. He recoiled, but his body did not obey. His hands, his own hands, lifted the fork. And, before he could stop himself, he took a bite. The flesh was warm, rich, almost familiar. The taste, it was the taste of something lost, of something he had once cherished. A scream built in his chest, but it did not escape. It froze, lodged in his throat. The laughter grew louder, filling every corner of the room. It was the sound of his past, the sound of all he had taken, all he had buried. The other figures at the table chewed, eyes fixed on him. their faces stretched in sickening grins. And the boy, his wide, glassy eyes, watched him with something akin to pity. "Finish it, Archibald." Lady Margaret's voice purred from across the table. Her mouth moved, but it was no longer her voice. It was something ancient, something hungry. The clock on the wall began to tick again. But its sound was wrong. It was no longer a beat. It was a countdown. He could feel his pulse quickening, his stomach churning, his hands trembling as he reached for another bite. The room was closing in. The walls, once grand and sturdy, seemed to be leaning closer, the ceiling pressing down. With every chew, he felt the weight of every death he had caused, every lie, every twisted turn of fate. And then, as the last of the meat disappeared from his plate, he felt something shift. The air turned cold. The laughter stopped. There was only silence now, heavy, creeping into his bones. Archibald looked around, and the figures at the table had all vanished. Not even a trace remained. The door slammed open. The sound was deafening, and in the doorway stood the reflection of his own face. But it was not the man he had seen before. This was something darker, something that knew him, knew all of him. It smiled, that wide, broken smile, and whispered, "It's time to join the feast." Archibald tried to scream, but no sound came. He reached for the doorframe, but his fingers melted through it, slipping into darkness. And in that moment, he understood. The house had always been his, and now he was its final guest. The darkness swallowed him whole, pulling him deeper. It was not cold. It was not hot. It was an absence, a void that pressed against him from every direction. His limbs flailed, but there was nothing to grasp, nothing to stop his descent. He tried to scream again, but the sound was muffled, stifled, like the air itself was made of velvet. His chest tightened. His heart thundered against his ribs. Suddenly, he felt a tug, a sharp yank at his soul, as if the very essence of him was being pulled apart. The tugging grew stronger, pulling him toward something that called him by name. It was not a voice. It was a presence. And then he saw it, a flash, a brief, fleeting image in the swirling darkness. A figure, tall, thin, its skin pale, stretched tight over bones. It reached out with long, bony fingers. The air shimmered around it. Archibald's heart skipped. It wasn't just any figure. It was him, the real him, the reflection, the dark version of himself, the one he had always been running from. The figure's smile was stretched wider now, almost too wide for a human face. It bared its teeth, long, sharp, jagged. "I've waited," it whispered. "I've always waited for you to join me." The darkness thickened. It coiled around him like a serpent, cold, suffocating. He felt his body change, twist, melt into the shadows. The world spun. The familiar feeling of solid ground disappeared. And then, as the darkness swallowed him whole, he understood. The house was not a place. It was a living thing, a creature that had fed on him, on his sins, on his guilt. And now, it was time to become him. In that final moment, he felt his soul rip in two. One half remained, lost in the void. The other took its place. The smile that spread across his face was not his. And when the house settled into silence, once more, there was no Archibald Hall. Not anymore. Only the Monster Butler. The mansion stood silent once again, its windows reflecting nothing but the weight of forgotten memories. The grand estate, so full of life before, now lay empty, consumed by its own hunger. The sun began to set, casting a soft, golden light over the crumbling stone. It was a sight that would have been beautiful, if not for the shadow that clung to it like a stain. Inside, the dining room was undisturbed. The candles, once flickering with unnatural light, had now extinguished. The table was empty, no guests, no whispers, no laughter. But in the reflection of the dusty mirror above the fireplace, there was something new. A figure stood tall, dressed impeccably in a butler's uniform, a shadowy smile on his lips. He gazed back at his own reflection, a reflection that was now his own face, not one of guilt, not one of fear, but a face of finality. The Monster Butler. The mansion had claimed him. His sins, his lies, his darkness, they were now one with the house. Archibald Hall was gone, but in his place, the house had found a new servant. And though the mansion would stand still, it was never truly empty, for there would always be someone to answer the door, someone to ring the bell, someone to serve the guests who never truly leave. The Monster Butler, forever bound to the house, to the shadows that whispered his name. And so, the house continued, silent, waiting for the next guest to arrive.